right, guys, welcome back. We're doing trauma and talking about probably one of the biggest factors to trauma, how they got injured, or otherwise known as the mechanism of injury. And you need to be taking some time to figure this one out because it can lead us to that high index of suspicion of actually where they're hurt. Now, there's a lot of slides in this, so I highly recommend that you go back and look at the actual slides, because there are some that, yes, I'm going to gloss over because otherwise we're going to be here for 3 hours doing this one. And I don't want to go that far, but we're going to kind of hit the basis. So trauma is divided into blunt and penetrating. Okay? And actually, they usually have both of these. But again, remember that both of them can cause an injury. But we got to look at the kinematics of how this happened. So if we're taking a look at this car, how did this incident happen? Did it go in, slide, and then it pushed everything? And think about all the factors of the body moving towards that tree, and the sudden stop, along with maybe the sharp objects that might be sticking the person, or their foot caught down here, or the seat belt that was across here that separated the pelvis. So all of these things can come into play here. Now, again, your kinetics is the branch of physics that deals with objects in motion and the exchange of energy. And the kinematics is the study of motion on the body system, or bodies without consideration given to the mass or force acting on it. Okay? So inertia is, again, it's a law of inertia, is how objects in motion behave. Okay? Energy, again, cannot be destroyed. It can only be changed in form. Okay? So inertia, again, is one of those things. The body's going to will remain in motion until acted upon by an outside force. Okay, so when it acts upon, that's usually where your damages come into play. So your energy is technically considered the ability to do work, and the law of energy conservation, energy cannot be created or destroyed, like I just said. It can only be changed into one form or another, and that includes damaged tissue. Okay, so when we're talking about force, okay, it's the object's mass times the velocity squared, by the way. So mass times velocity squared, okay? So, and again, and what we do, and basically what I'm trying to say with this, if I get hit by a car doing 10 miles an hour versus a car that gets hit at doing 100 miles an hour, which one's going to do more damage? The car doing 100 miles an hour. Now, if I get hit by that same car going 10 miles an hour versus a semi-truck hitting me at 10 miles an hour, which one's going to do more damage? It's going to be the semi-truck, okay? But remember, the faster things are going and the faster that body absorbed it is the more damage that's going to be done, okay? So remember that little thing. So the faster the object is going, the more damage. But it's also got a relationship with the mass of the object. Again, a small .22 bullet going at 300 meters per second, going to cause damage. A .44 Magnum bullet going at 900 feet per second, it's going to do a lot more damage because of the velocity in which it was going. Okay? So again, kinetic energy is mass times velocity squared. I've always used mass, and I've never done the divided by 2 thing. You don't need to figure that part out, but what you do need to remember is the faster it's going, it's probably going to do more damage. The more mass it has, it's going to do more damage, okay? But if we're talking about which one is worse, the speed in which they were going is a lot worse, okay? So understanding that these are the things that cause, that's what we're looking for. We're looking at the mechanism of injury here, okay? And again, so penetrating trauma occurs when the physically enters the body or directly or indirectly injures tissue, where blunt trauma is the energy and the forces, but not the object enters the body. Good example, steering wheel causes blunt force trauma. It hits the outside tissue, doesn't break the tissue. Now, let's say that the piece of glass breaks off, gets in between there, and puts a puncture in there. That's a penetrating trauma. All right? So blunt trauma can cause compression, stretch, and shear. And again, compression is when it actually squeezes together. Stretch is where is the opposite of that. And then your shear is actually where it tears upon a force. And the example would be like there's a ligament in between the ligamentum teres and that's between your left and right lobe of your liver. One of the biggest problems with the liver shear and significant internal bleeding, okay? And why do I have a feeling that this lovely Latin term is going to be on your quiz somewhere? I don't know. Okay, so again, just remember that the mechanism of injuries. Again, the CDC says that this is one of the biggest predictors of the need for trauma center care. Guys, actually, the newer cars has sensors in them that actually OnStar will call the trauma alert because they've got the data that shows if they hit with this type of force, that they're probably going to be a 99% chance that they're going to be a trauma alert. And it's pretty amazing about how those studies are extremely accurate. Okay? So again, you got to consider the mechanism of injuries when you're dealing with this. Now we're going to go into the blunt force trauma, okay? And we'll actually finish up blunt force trauma in the next video, but we're going to start it now. And we're talking, it's usually caused, the motor vehicle collisions are our big ones that we get this from. But it can result from falls, explosions, crush injuries, sports injuries have them as well. So again, we've kind of already gone over the stats. We've had a lot of people get hurt in car accidents. It's kind of why EMS was invented. So again, the things, the events that happen in a vehicle collision. You have the actual vehicle collide, you have the bodies collide, and then the organs collide, and then you'll have a secondary collision, and then they can have additional impacts that affect it. So you need to find out exactly what happened on a traffic crash to figure out what type of forces were involved. Recently, I was involved in a little bump on the back, and I will tell you, my back hurt for a couple of weeks, but it was that force going forward and then hitting the car in front of me. Again, both of those forces caused shifts in the weight. Now, again, fortunately for me, it was a low impact, the low velocity impact, but again, it was still significant impact from the weight of the vehicles, okay? So again, had that guy been going 80 miles an hour instead of the 5 miles an hour that he hit me, I probably would have been a lot worse. So the events of the impact, remember you get the vehicle collision and then the body's going to keep going and then the organs are still going forward and they're going to hit, or whatever direction they end up going is stopping or slowing. If the occurs when the object is struck by loose objects in the vehicle, yes, that's right. If you don't have things secured in your vehicle, next thing you know, they're flying projectiles. And then remember that if they undergo a second impact, again, it can increase the seriousness of the things that were already there. And hopefully you want to find out about what type of restraints that they were wearing. Be specific in that, and you need to put this in your report, by the way. And if they were used correctly, okay, that's very important. Lap belts, again, seat belts today usually have a lap and shoulder. The back seats usually just have most of them today actually have a lap and shoulder except for maybe the center seat, okay? These are very good in helping, but the problem is that the shoulder straps can actually cause bruising, the ribs, the sternum. So remember, they're there to absorb it so that you don't go flying forward into the actual something that can cause serious damage. There can also be supplemental restraints, airbags. These guys, again, they usually activate when either front or side collision, and then they help the cushion absorb. Just remember, they come out pretty quick, and the propellant used in some of the older cars, they can actually cause irritation to the skin. They'll complain of burning sensation. It beats the snot out of them actually getting an impact collision. It will slow that collision down, okay? It's exactly what they're made to do. It's good for frontal impact collisions, and again, depending on how many of them that they have in the car. Children in safety seats in the front seat may sustain serious injury. Remember, that's hard. It's going to come flying out of there, which is why your kid shouldn't be in the front seat. If they are in the front seat, they should be facing backwards. So again, undeployed airbags, please look out for those, because there's nothing more wonderful feeling than one of those things. Somebody bumps the car and it finally decides to go off right into your back. Yeah, it feels really good, by the way. All right, 2-year-old or smaller, you need to be in a seat. Period! Exclamation point. If not, by the way, up to the age of 5 here in Florida, they actually have to be in a booster seat. So again, it allows them, it's better protection for the kids, okay? They need to be in there. They need to be in there correctly. And by the way, the headrest, by the way, in a car is designed so you don't get a whiplash injury, mostly, if they used it correctly, okay? Your passenger compartment intrusion, These guys, again, look for if it's bent in, okay? Because that's how much force is. Remember that cars nowadays are made to kind of crumple. They're made and they're designed to absorb that kinetic energy. But we want to see how much actually got in there. So the different type of impacts that we can have. Again, this would be an example of a front end collision. Remember, usually these guys have the up and over or down and under injuries. They can be ejected. Hopefully they're being restrained at that point. And let's see here. The crumple zone is the forces where it's involved. Now lateral impacts, that's what we're talking about, the side of the car. Again, this is an example of a lateral impact. It's by the way, like 1/4 of all collisions are these guys. But remember, your cervical spine injury is not going to be the front and back. It's usually going to be the side to side. Okay, so remember that when you're dealing with and they may actually present. Oh man, my neck hurts. Okay, yeah, be careful about putting those guys back to center. Do it very gingerly, and if it hurts at all, stop it. So you can have oblique injury. So again, this is kind of at an angle towards the back there where this is actually hit. The actual rear end collision, you no longer have a trunk. And again, remember that a lot of force, it doesn't take much force to do this, but I will tell you that it still transmits those forces through the car. The rollover, they change it. It's usually the high center of gravity, very violent again. And remember, things usually go flying around in these as well. So they have limited crumple zones up top. So again, you're kind of really exposed. All right. So again, look at make sure you check out the car itself. Okay. The traffic that's near them. Make sure you don't have any down power lines. Make sure that the safe. Make sure the vehicle is safe to approach. It should be stabilized. Okay. Hybrid vehicles. Remember that these guys have a large danger of execution. Don't cut the orange cable. I want to say that again. Don't cut the orange cable. Okay. Most of these guys, they have a disconnect in the front. You simply you pop that little breaker, and again it de-energizes the entire system. Conservative, again, figure out what exactly in a brief. You don't need to do a full on, but find out exactly how the patient got hit and how they may have gotten turned, and that's where it's a good place to start looking for the injuries that you might see. Again, make sure that your patient's not impaired. Again, alcohol, drugs are number one guys, okay? And again, more than half of involved drivers are intoxicated with a fatal collision. They usually think that they're going slower when they're actually going faster than they should be. The good news is, by the way, marijuana is the exact opposite. This is the guy that's driving 10 miles an hour. Somebody that's drunk will usually try to go faster than they should be, okay? Also, it removes inhibitions, so that's why they think that they can go faster. So, by the way, again, vehicle mortality, certain body regions, especially prone to life-threatening injuries. That would be the abdomen, the neck, the head, definitely the torso. Look at these guys, and when we're doing that first sweep of these patients, after doing the ABCs, that rapid secondary is looking exactly at those areas for things that's going to kill them in the next 5 minutes, okay? Motorcycle collisions, again, yes, they're ejected from the vehicle. No, that doesn't make them a trauma alert, okay? It's trauma alert, by the way, if they're ejected from an interior closed cab of a vehicle, not from the truck bed. Now, does this not mean that there's still a trauma alert? Yeah, probably, because of the significance of the mechanism of injury, okay? Motorcyclists usually don't have, there's nothing around them to absorb crash energy, okay? And so, again, especially they lay the bike down, they're laying on the bike, they weren't wearing their helmet. Again, and usually the frontal impact, they dip forward and the biker actually goes up and over. Again, handlebars can catch the lower abdomen, causing injuries, and it usually results in any type of impact usually results in the biker coming off. Okay, you're sliding. This is when they decide to lay the bike down. This is when you get a lot of the road rash. Reduces the chances of ejection, but again, it increases lacerations, minor injuries. But again, they survive and get to walk from it. Okay. Again, an ejection is kind of common in a motorcycle accident. So again,
start looking at how they went over, how far away they are from the bike. It gives us good clues of how much injury could have happened. When a pedestrian is struck, usually it's the vehicle's mass and the speed is probably the bigger thing there. Again, how big is the vehicle? And again, usually it injures the lower extremities. By the way, children usually turn into a car, especially the smaller children. Most other people turn away from the car, okay? So if you still got one that's that got hit and then they're still like facing the car, there's an issue there because they never actually saw the vehicle. There was no chance probably to brake. Off-road vehicles, yeah, four-wheelers, yeah, a special degree of torture there, okay? And again, usually and our response is delayed to that because they're usually out in the woods. And getting the victim out might be trouble. Same thing with snowmobiles. Again, really hard to get to them usually. Getting them back is kind of the fun part. There's no, I know that we have a real big snowmobile problem here in Florida, but weirder things can happen. We got jet skis, okay? But don't forget about the watercraft. Yeah, they can cause significant injury, and usually because there's no such thing as a speed limit in a boat. Yeah, at this point, we're looking at some major kinematic problems. Not only that, but the hypothermia from when they're going into water. Yes, the water, even though it's 70 degrees, that's a lot cooler than our 98.6. All right, off-road vehicles, by the way, I said jet skis a little bit earlier, and don't forget about the drowning and the hypothermia from those guys. Well, the good news is we've actually reached the end of our thing with the blunt trauma. We're going to pick up with the rest of the blunt trauma on the next video. So I will see you guys then.